This country, Ceann Comhairle, now has big problems. There are 4 major challenges that I believe are facing this country at the moment. The first is on our economy. Once the pride of Europe, the envy of the world, Ireland's economy is now heading towards recession. Over the course of the last year, we have seen unemployment rise by the highest number in 40 years, broke through the 200,000 mark. Prices are increasing. Economic growth is down. Related to the economic problem is the changed fortunes of our public finances. 2 years ago, this country had a surplus, 5 billion. This year so far, it's 1.5 billion minus. Government departments, we know, are already working with the rulers to see where cuts are going to be imposed. On top of that, following last week's decision on the referendum, this country is now facing what is probably its biggest diplomatic challenge since World War II, as we find ourselves in a new place with regard to our relationship with the European Union. And the fourth challenge that I believe we are facing, and it is a factor that I believe contributed to last week's decision, is that we have seen over the past decade or more an erosion of confidence in politics. With over a decade of Charvet shirts, stories about bets on horses at races meetings that never happened, and cock and bull stories at tribunals, are eventually settling, not just on those who were culpable, but settling on the body politic as a whole, with consequential erosion of confidence in politics. In those circumstances, I believe that it is unthinkable and it would be irresponsible for Dáil Éireann to be put into recess and suspend public business for a period of 3 months. And I say that the alternative, the amendment that is proposed by the government to our motion here this evening, that we will have a week extra of what? Of statements on the National Development Plan, apparently with no Dáil questions, no order of business, no leaders' questions, no normal parliamentary exchange. That simply is not an acceptable alternative. Now, I know we have these debates every year at Ceann Comhairle about the summer recess, and to a certain extent the general arguments are well rehearsed at this stage. The Labour Party has consistently argued here in this House for a lengthening of our sitting year. We have one of the lowest sitting years of any parliament that we can find. 2005, the last year for which comparable figures are available in other parliaments, Dáil Éireann sat 92 days, the House of Commons 133 days, the United States Senate 159 days, the United States House of Representatives 140 days, the Chamber of Deputies in Italy 159 days, and I could go on. Now, against that, I know the argument that is made that, of course, TDs don't actually go on holidays, that we work in our constituencies and that work in the important committees of this House continue up until the end of July. And that is true. I would acknowledge that any TD who took a 3-month holiday is unlikely to remain a TD for very long, particularly in the highly competitive electoral environment in which we all have to survive. But the long summer recesses that this House takes invites a public odium on the way in which business is done here. Aside altogether from the public odium that attracts, I believe that this year, more than any year, there is an unanswerable case for keeping this House in session and for conducting the business of government in public. This year, there is huge work to be done. The country is facing major difficulties. The message that needs to go out from this House is not that TDs are going on holidays, but that things are serious and that leave is cancelled. For months now, the government has sought to ignore the deterioration in the economy. And I was struck today by the degree of denial that there was in the Taoiseach's responses when I asked him about this here earlier today. It's as if there isn't an economic problem. It's as if he doesn't get it. It's as if the government are not getting the same messages that the rest of the country are getting. They've certainly sought to ignore the accumulating facts, and where they couldn't avoid them, they seem to be blaming somebody else. Now that simply cannot continue. We must address the pressing concerns that are creating so much uncertainty and indeed hardship among the people of this country. For months now, there has been mounting evidence that Ireland is facing into a recession. The scale of the slump in house building, which is of the government's own making in large part, is now such that it could drag us into negative growth this year. Davy stockbrokers now expect that 45,000 houses will be built in 2008 and only 29,000 in 2009. As a result, the CSO reports that its index of construction employment is down by 14% in the year to April. The downturn, however, is no longer confined to construction. There is strong evidence that expectations are falling across the economy and consumer sentiment is taking a hammering. The volume of retail sales fell in April by 3.2% when compared to April 2007. The ESRI index of consumer sentiment has been falling rapidly. Sluggish consumption growth has real and serious implications for employment, especially in the services sector. We know that unemployment is already rising. The live register has now increased by some 48,000 in the past 12 months. Since the beginning of this year, the number of people signing on, seasonally adjusted, has increased by 235 each day, the equivalent of a factory closing every day of the week.